4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is helpful to people. I know that 8 p.m. my time was even a little late for me, and hopefully the West Coast people will be able to join in, and the East Coast people don't have to stay up so late. So thank you, wherever you are. Thank you for joining in. And this is a call-in show, everyone. So please do call in. You know how much I love call-ins. 323-524-2599. And the topic today is the unseen battle, why psychological healing is vital for narcissistic abuse victims. So we're going to jump right into that. And first I'm going to explain about the unseen battle. Well, the unseen battle, let's think about that as the unconscious. What are we battling with? Well, we're battling the unknown because it seems like everything is okay. As a matter of fact, not only is everything okay, everything's great. At the beginning of a narcissistic relationship, there's a lot of wine and roses, a lot of love bombing, a lot of mirroring and attunement, and anything to gain favor with you, so that they can hook you in and start putting their fangs into you and begin the vampiring process. So how come it's an unseen battle? Because most people do not think that way. Most people are not that vicious, and most people are not out to get other people and take from them, whether it be financially or emotionally, spiritually, sexually, any which way. So just because you don't think that way, it doesn't mean that others don't think that way. So what you don't know and what you don't see is a battle that you cannot fight or win, because you don't know what you don't know until you're nice and bonded and toxically bonded and into the game and deep into the hostage situation of narcissism. And then it's very, very, very difficult to extricate yourself. So it is very important to have healing from your psychological wounds of the past, because you want to be conscious and not at the effect unconsciously. So I hope that makes some semblance of sense to everyone, that you can't fight a battle that you don't know. You don't understand these unconscious forces until you learn about them. And even the narcissist doesn't understand his or her unconscious forces, because they're acting out on their ugly defense mechanism, which is the narcissistic defense, which is a defense of shielding themselves from injury by becoming users of your services rather than participators and enhancers of your life. So it is vitally important that you heal thyself before jumping into life, because that's how you can best protect yourself. What you don't know, you can't deal with, and what you can't deal with, you are at the effect of. And if you're at the effect of, then you're vulnerable to all kinds of lies, manipulations, and so on. So anybody out there can identify with what I'm saying, and if you can, please call in. And maybe let's start with, if there's anybody that wants to share how they got ensnared into a narcissistic trap, and what they didn't know, and what they assumed, and what later turned out to be something different than what they expected, and what it looked like at the beginning and the middle and the end, because it goes through phases, right? Phase 1, love bombing. All is good in the world. Not only is it good, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. Phase 2, you think you're losing your mind. You're being gaslit. You're doubting yourself. So you don't know if it's you or them. And phase 3, you're surprised. They're demeaning, they're devaluing, they're destroying you, and even discarding you, and you have no idea why you are being kicked to the curb. You thought you were being loving and generous and all that, but the plan from their point of view was not to create a relationship. The plan was to extract from the relationship. So that is why it is vitally important for you to heal before jumping into any relationship. And so for people out there who are people pleasers, it's especially important because you are the most vulnerable. If you're a little bit on the naive side, if you presume the best in people or assume the best in people, if you're overly trusting, if your boundaries are weak, if you're a little bit gullible, if you do something that I've talked several times about called positive projection, if you project on others qualities that you wish they had, and maybe even qualities that you have, like honesty, integrity, and so on, that's what positive projection is. They didn't earn it. They didn't prove themselves to be any of those qualities, but you assumed them to be true because that's all you know, is how to behave that way. So please know that just because you're that way, it doesn't mean that other people are that way. You and other people are not the same. Everyone is unique. People's ethics and morals are different, and you have to figure all that out before you jump into a relationship with them, or else, again, what happens is that you get more and more entangled, you're more and more bonded, you become what's known as toxically bonded to these people, and that happens when you hear them, smell them, experience them, have sex with them, and get more and more involved in their mind, body, and soul. And then it's really, really hard to get out because, you know, it's kind of like I refer to it as the Roach Motel, right? Remember that commercial? The Roach Motel, you can check in, but you can't check out. And that's the same with this narcissistic trap. You check in, and then you can't check out because you miss them, or you think that you can't live without them, or you think that you're going crazy and they're right, and you're a horrible person because you've ruined it all. And I think that people who are particularly tuning into my show are already looking for some healing along these lines, because why else would you be listening to this show if you didn't on some level encounter a narcissist, or if on some level you didn't become at the effect or victim to somebody else's, what I like to refer to as system gone wrong. So let's explore the unconscious, that place deep down into the lower stratas of a place in your mind that Sigmund Freud referred to as the unconscious. And why I call my show What the Freud is because we're constantly playing out our repetitive unconscious patterns, because if they're unconscious, we want to play them over and over, like the repetition principle suggests, Freud's repetition principle suggests, so that we can close the psychological files and heal them, and then not need to repeat those patterns ever again. But that usually doesn't happen. What usually happens is that we get triggered, we go into chaos, we try to defend ourselves, we crash and burn, and then we get reinfected and start the cycle all over again. So I'll mind map that for you. For those of you who are not familiar with my mind map, the mind map is a pathway that I created for healing, and I'll walk you through it. So if you look at panel 1, those shadows represent the wounds of childhood, wounds of emotional neglect, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, smothering, spoiling. So anything that interferes with your psychological growth represent those shadows. Now, the light in the background is all of your potential and realized self-actualization. It's the best of your best. When you're wounded, it stops you from growing into the best of your best because you're, in essence, always fighting the battle of the effects of these wounds on your psyche. So it's very, very hard to grow. So people often ask, well, what happened to the narcissist and what happened to the person who is subject to narcissistic abuse? How were they wounded? Why are they acting like they're acting? So a couple of theories out there. One is that the narcissist was spoiled to death and they never earned the right to be special, but they were deemed special because they marched to the drum of their parents and they were rewarded for being an agent of their parents, a flying monkey, if you will, carrying out parents' wishes and so on, like a golden child. And then they were anointed this special one. And so as a result of everything that they were manipulated to do or rewarded to do, they became. So they became a human doing rather than a human being. Another way narcissists are formed if they are emotionally neglected, they're not connected to, which is also the case in the first scenario I explained, because there's no emotional connection there. They're not connected to, and also they have parents that might demean and devalue and destroy them. Do we have a question or a call in?
We do have a question if you'd like it.
Sure.
And don't forget, you can call in because we want to make sure you call in and get to talk directly to Dr. Judy at 323-524-2599. But the question is, what are the long-term outcomes for victims of narcissistic abuse who undergo psychological healing, and how does this process contribute to resilience and post-traumatic growth?
Okay, that's great. So just read it again so I get all the parts of it. So
what are the long-term outcomes for victims of narcissistic abuse who undergo psychological healing? And then there's a part 2. So if you want to answer the first part.
Okay, let me address that first, so that I can make sure I'm thorough with it. What are the long-term outcomes if they undergo psychological healing? Is that the gist of the question?
Yes, if they undergo psychological healing.
Okay, so number one, we make the unconscious conscious, so you can never be fooled by unconscious forces. You're not at the effect of these unconscious forces. Number two, you heal your own hole in the soul that created the propensity to hook up with people who are narcissists and vampires. Number three, you develop immunity because of the knowledge and because of the healing. You are now much more immune and you're just on top of things. So, the old expression, your picker's broken. Well, your picker's broken when you are living in unconscious territory and you're bonding to people who are basically entrapping you and ensnaring you into their web of narcissism. So I hope that answers part one of the question. Go ahead with part two.
All right. And I don't know if that may have answered a little bit in your question, but how does this process contribute to the resilience and post-traumatic growth?
Well, first of all, post-traumatic stress, PTSD, is at this stage usually complex because it is old, unhealed childhood wounds. So, PTSD, you get a gun, you get held up by a gun and then you suffer from PTSD, or you're in an accident and you get flashbacks and nightmares and so on and so forth. You kind of know what happened And so it's more in the conscious territory. Now, complex PTSD, I like to refer to it as old, unhealed childhood wounds that are not accessible in your memory. So this is that black box of what happened to you when you were born and at age 2 months and 6 months and 8 months and 12 months and, and so on. This is precognitive. So the precognitive area is where you don't know what you don't know. However, that doesn't mean that you're not injured. That doesn't mean that your amygdala doesn't crack up and go out of control and go into fight and flight and freeze and fawn mode. Okay, so once again, the question, so I can make sure that I get all the elements, part 2, the resilience, I think.
Yes, it was the resilience.
You have a resilience because now you're not, as I like to say to my patients, you're not imploding on the feelings. First of all, we're exhuming the feelings. Okay, we're analyzing the unconscious and reading the hieroglyphics of who done it and what happened to you through your symptoms, through an analysis of what patterns you're engaged in. And so once you know that, you begin to be more resilient just because you know more and you can have a bird's eye view. And as I said to somebody today, once you know what you didn't know, you're conscious, right? You can make different choices and you don't have to identify with horrible core beliefs that are pumped into you through these wounds of childhood, core beliefs that sound like I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough, or I'm incapable, or I'm powerless, or I have no voice. So we've got to identify these core beliefs and identify what you identified with. And when you're conscious, you can identify it, meaning how you got injured, how did all this go down, versus identify with it and make it your fault and live in blame and shame. So I hope I covered a lot of territory in that answer. Maybe the person who asked the question can say yay, nay, clarify, or even better, call in. I think I'm spoiling you guys. No wonder I don't get any call-ins. I allow people to just ask me questions in the chat room. Okay, well, I do really genuinely want to answer your question. It's just juicier when you call in. You don't even have to say your real name, and then we can give live examples of what I'm talking about and connect the dots and maybe have some aha experiences, which is what happens in the treatment room, is that people, you could see them light up, literally, like, aha, now I know why. Now I understand why I drink too much or smoke too much. Now I understand why I go after unavailable people. Aha, now I understand why being ignored is not such a big deal, because it feels familial even though it's not nourishing. So these are the things that are supposed to happen in therapy: connecting the dots, exhuming the unconscious, making the unconscious conscious so that you no longer live at the effect. And speaking of at the effect, I have a book called Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And that is available through Amazon.com. You can grab a copy. You can also download a free copy by asking for it. And it's yours. And it'll connect the dots. You see the DNA strand, which represents how you've been encoded with darkness from the past. See all that dark DNA? That's the past, right? And then as you become more causal, you shift out of the mess and you start elevating yourself and climbing the ladder of psychological and psycho-spiritual growth, which is the point of the mind map. So I'll put the mind map back up one more time so that you can see what the process is. The process is you have to know what was encoded in you by looking at your wounds, your reactions, and the encodings, or those horrible negative core beliefs. We have to decode all the garbage and the lies and the misperceptions, and then we have to address the defense mechanisms and have a free space and a safe space for you to express all of your rage and all of your shame and guilt, which is basically rage against the self, and help you, instead of imploding and exploding, to help you unload all of the pain and clean out so that you can shift into healing, a paradigm shift into synergy, and then healing, which is a recoding, a new DNA, psychological DNA code, which will elevate you and help you evolve up the psycho-spiritual ladder and balance or heal. Okay, so it's encode, decode, and recode. And the process is 10 sessions. And guess what? If you don't want to ever talk to any therapist and do the therapy, I now have a video called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And there it is. It's up on my website, 𝗦𝗛𝗕𝗘𝗧.com. The introduction is even on my website. You could press a little button if you go on there and learn more, and you will have a complete introduction to my Healing from Narcissistic Abuse video. And if you can't afford it, just contact me and I'll chunk it down for you so that you can make payment plans. If you're in dire need, I tend to be generous with people who really can't afford things. I'll offer discounts and so on. But talk to me. Don't stay unconscious. Don't stay unhealed. I put all my work into this video. I think it's really nicely produced. I had a great team help me. And the points are there and the dots are connected. And there's no reason in the world why you can't sit down with that video, which includes a journal, by the way, and my book, and some other goodies like downloads and ways to dialogue. And there's just a lot of good things in that video that will help you elevate and clean out your path. So I hope that helps to create a pathway of healing for people. And of course, if you want to do one-on-one therapy, contact me. We could work together. I could put you in touch with one of my staff members. We'll figure it out. But please do not stay in an unhealed place, because again, no immunity, lots of vulnerability, and plenty of people out there that want to take advantage of your vulnerability. So definitely not a good place to be. So this is a call-in show, as you all know. Please feel free to call in 323-524-2599. And one of the ways that you could tell that you've got healing to do, we have more questions. No call-ins. God, I'm really spoiling everybody. Okay. All right. What are the questions?
All right. So actually, you explained a little bit about somebody in the chat room said, I'm kind of stuck in a catch-22. I'm healing, but there's no budget to look for an actual therapist, no logistics for something as simpler as calling, nor health to make more income. What should I do?
Call me, and I'll find a way for you to afford a pathway to healing. You could do the video. You can chunk it down into however many payments you can do. I'll offer you discount. I don't care. I really want people to heal. You know, it's like, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't I help people who need help? I'm in a position to do it. I love it. And of course, if you could afford it, then that helps a lot, because obviously there are costs involved in running the radio show and the Psychological Healing Center and so on and so forth. But if you can't afford it, I tend to be pretty generous, and I really want to make a difference. So call me. No, no, listen, I'm going to take away all your excuses. Okay. So one way or the other, we'll figure out a pathway for you to heal, whether it's through a video or video combined with a little bit of therapy or whatever is needed for your psycho-spiritual growth. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are all interconnected. And if you're hurting, then others are hurting because you're hurting. And insofar as the narcissist is concerned, they're hurting, but they've cut their heart out and numbed their pain and have erected defense mechanisms to quell the pain. And now you're their band-aid, so to speak. You're covering up the pain. So, it's not a great system when other people are hurting. We are all interconnected. So if you hurt, I hurt, other people hurt, and then we're not creating a really great world, are we? So the more you heal, the more you can pass that to the next generation, pass that to your friends, be more kind and generous and loving and calm, and offer more light to the world. So I'm in a generous mood. Call me and we'll get it started. No more excuses. If you want to heal, it truly is available to you.
No more excuses. So give
no more excuses.
And there is another question and he just said, "Wow, thank you. I'm going to try to calm down and become more involved." So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. So. Great. Just, I'm around. Somebody will help you. If not me, you'll get information and you'll get a way to access what you need. We'll figure it out.
This is 𝗦𝗪𝗡𝗃. That's her name, I believe. It says, "My husband is going through a tough time, but I feel like it's affecting me. How do I disconnect myself from his problems?"
Well, the first thing is to understand that your involvement in why your husband is treating you the way you're being treated, and oftentimes this comes down to your own childhood wounds of, I call it the law of allowance. If you come from a family that's abusive, neglectful, emotionally neglectful, any one of those wounds that I talk about, you are susceptible to narcissistic abuse. So that's why it's so vital to heal your wounds. So why are you affected by your husband? Because he's the most significant person in your life. And as I mentioned, we are all interconnected. So also he's your husband. So if he's warm to you, of course you're going to respond. If he's cold to you, of course you're going to respond. Now, if you're embedded in childhood wounds, you're going to not only get affected, you're going to get clearly triggered, and then it'll take you down that pathway of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. I hope I covered that question. Read it again so I know that I did. Hopefully.
Sure. So it says that my husband is going through a tough time, but I feel like it's affecting me. Affecting me. How do I disconnect myself from his problems?
Okay, so one of the things that we do, and it's of course natural for you to feel your husband's feelings because you're probably more of an empath and you absorb things, is that you're feeling it because his moods are going to affect your moods. So the first thing is to distinguish between what's going on with him and how it's affecting you, and draw that boundary. So again, it's a question of identifying it rather than with it. And this is a case where I wish you would call in, because you could only talk theory for so long. You've got to get the live case study of it. So if you call in, I could get the live case study on it. I can elaborate even more. Okay? But, you know, we do absorb other people's pain, no question about it. And then if you're sensitive to, oh no, what did I do? I'm not being a good wife. I could do more. You know, that's another trigger that we have to deal with within the relationship.
I actually like this question, and because we don't get this side of it too often. But it says, how can a mental health professional be better trained to recognize and treat the effects of narcissistic abuse on victims?
How can they be better trained?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting because today I was sitting with a patient and she was telling me about how inept her other therapies were. And I said, why? Because the other therapies were telling her to move on and just get over it and stop talking about the past. And I'm quite the opposite. You've got to exhume the ugly past. And therapists, stop telling your patients to get over it. If they could have, they would have. Okay, this is deep in their unconscious. It's in their negative core beliefs. It's in the fiber of their being, and you don't just tell somebody, get over it. It's like a brush off. It's another narcissistic injury. So how can therapists help? Know about the system, know the mind map. A lot of therapists just go on the seat of the pants. They have a diagnosis. Yay, diagnosis, narcissism, lack of empathy, demean, devalue, you know, all that. But what do you do with it? Well, you've got to go to the cause. That's why I have a system of healing. It goes to the cause. It takes a look at not just the behaviors and the patterns, it looks at the childhood wounds that are behind the behaviors and patterns. That's how you help. You don't try to affect change. You don't try to teach people new communication skills and behavior skills, because that's not going to cut it. It's not deep enough. It doesn't really go to the cause. It's at best teaching somebody to behave and control their symptoms and parent the therapist. Where's the paradigm shift? Where's the insight? Where is the new way of seeing and a new way of being? It's not there, and that's the problem.
That's great. I love it.
Now, anyone else want to call in? I'm not even going to say ask in the chat. And I can't bite you because I'm on a screen, so that's not going to happen.
She can scratch the screen, but not scratch you.
I could. Yeah. Been known to do that too, so got to be a little careful. So yes, that's how important it is to heal, because you do not want to be vulnerable. You don't want to be in the dark. You don't want to be psychologically not informed. You want to be on top of it. That's why it is helpful to think like a shrink, and that's one of the things that I talk about in my book. Every chapter has a summary. Think like a shrink. So what, you want to sign up with therapy that's going to keep you a lifetime patient, or do you want to sign up for therapy that's going to elevate you and teach you how to connect dots and think like a shrink and solve your own problems and eventually not need the therapist anymore? You think that the first model is more lucrative. Yeah, let's just take our sweet time about it and not really give people too much information in a short period of time. Let's keep them locked into therapy and make our living on multiple sessions. You think that that's very lucrative. I have to disagree. The lucrative way is to find the quickest, shortest pathway and most effective pathway to healing. Occam's razor, the concept of the shortest distance between 2 points. Make people appreciate and grateful for what you've done for them, and guess what they'll do? Obviously, they'll refer other people, and obviously they'll appreciate it so much that they may if they run into something later on in life, bring you in on the situation, maybe refer even their parents to you, or their brothers and sisters to you, or do some mind map family therapy. Or one thing that I like to do is help people heal corporate disconnect, because this narcissism shows up at the corporation as well. So the best model is the model that goes the deepest and provides patients with the shortest distance between 2 points. Nobody wants to be dragged through any process and sign up for ineffectual therapy. How does this make you feel? How does that make you feel? Not that your feelings are invalid, certainly not, but that's not therapy. Therapy is when you help connect their feelings to what is going on with the system gone wrong, and to root cause it back to the blueprint of the family of origin, which is multi-generational. So you really got to approach this from many different levels. And I've been doing this for over 30 years now. On some level, I was a stop smoking therapist. I had my own clinic called Habit Breakers when I was really young, and I did all kinds of counseling and learned psychoanalytic principles and hypnosis and all kinds of things. But I at some level felt like I was doing people a disservice, because I didn't feel like I had a really tight treatment plan. And then after I created the mind map, I had a plan, I had a pathway. And so I could just help people follow the yellow brick road of what I created. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it is important. I mean, would you, for example, build a house without a blueprint? If you're good intuitively, I guess you can, but most people need to know what kind of plumbing do they need? What kind of square footage do they need? How do they want to angle the structure? What are they going to use for heating and electrical systems? You want to know, and you want to plan. Same thing with therapy. You want to know, you want to plan, you want to investigate. And sometimes I like to think of myself as a psychological detective, because when you're dealing with childhood wounds, you can't very well ask your patient, so what happened to you at 6 months old? I don't know. How I couldn't even talk at 6 months old. What are you talking about? Well, you look at the symptoms. You look at the reactions to the wound. Babies who've been traumatized may shut down. They may stop eating. They may be stressed. They may have digestive problems. The mind and the body are intricately interconnected. You will see signs of trauma. You will see signs of human disconnect in your patients based on their symptoms and based on some of the stories and the questions that you ask them, and you weave it together and you figure out what happened, who done it, how they reacted, what they came to believe, how the system gone wrong took them down into chaos, what kind of defense mechanisms they use to defend against the pain, and what kind of breakdowns are occurring in their life right now that are emergency situations and necessitate that they get on it ASAP. What is a breakdown? It could be a breakdown in the marriage. Somebody walks into your office, they're getting a divorce. In the case of smoking, sometimes a breakdown is somebody has cancer, and the doctor has insisted many times, of course, but finally the person says, I can't do it anymore. Or they have emphysema, I could barely breathe, I can't smoke anymore. So that's what I mean by breakdown. And when you do the mind map, you don't have to wait till you break down. That's the prevention part. Why wait till you break down? Why not just come in when you've got knowledge of the symptoms and knowledge of the chaos and, the knowledge that preempts the breakdown? So going back to a previous question, it will give you immunity, and it'll sharpen you to your unconscious self, and it'll also prevent you. Okay? One of my favorite quotes, I think it's by Einstein, is, yeah, I think it's by Einstein. Smart people solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. Okay? So that's what the mind map does. It actually helps to prevent you next round into falling into the narcissistic trap, if you will. Can't afford it. Every time you go through one of those spin cycles, it just makes you sicker and sicker. And now we know that autoimmune diseases and all kinds of muscle tension and TMJ and all kinds of imbalances in the body, stress hormones, cortisol, so on, are all at the effect of our emotions. And we have to stop putting ourselves under that level of stress, and we have to build a system of immunity into our system, so that we're not breaking down physically, psychologically, any which way. So I think we have time for maybe a question or two, or a call in, hopefully. And I can put it in the context of the mind map, and again, why it's so vital for people to heal after they've been victims of narcissistic abuse. Well, narcissistic abuse will, in essence, trigger the earthquake in you. If you've been abandoned, if you've been betrayed, if you've been kicked to the curb by somebody that you are very bonded with, well, that's really going to hurt. And you've got to heal from that, because sometimes the new abusive situation could be even worse than your family of origin. Sometimes it doesn't get better. Sometimes you end up with somebody who's even more cruel to you than your own parents. So that can happen too. And why does that happen? Because, again, you're vulnerable, you want to heal the pattern, you go back into the dynamics of somebody that hurts you in a similar way that your parents did, whether it be through abandonment or demeaning you, or extracting from you money or sexual favors, whatever they're doing. It's going to leave you feeling less than. And please remember, and I say this to everyone, the only game in town worthy of playing is the game of synergy. 1 + 1, 1 meaning you plus another person, together make more light, and you become growth partners for whatever time you're interfacing, whether it be a business deal or a long-term relationship, or whether it be you're teaching somebody, or it's your son, your daughter. Okay, no matter who you're interfacing with, you always have the opportunity to make a difference and help another human being as you are helped by another human being. And that is the synergy. So let me show you the synergy panel. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. So if you see the 3 interconnecting circles, or those orbs that are interconnecting, panel 7, that's a model for synergy. You plus another creates light. The opposite is you plus another creates vampiring, darkness, being used, being depleted, becoming sick, and there's no light. Only darkness, only sucking energy out of you, but nothing enhancing. So I hope that you're learning something. You're learning about systems gone wrong and how vital it is to heal from narcissistic abuse, and to heal psychologically so you don't become a victim to narcissistic abuse, especially all you people pleasers out there. So no excuses. Call me, be in touch. We'll figure out a way for you to get going with your healing. Okay. No other questions, thoughts? Anybody?
There is one more question that it's Mamu in YouTube said, how do you know if you have healed yourself, or how, or do you ever completely heal?
Well, I think no one ever 100,000% doesn't feel triggered. I don't think so. There are triggers in life. How do you know that you've healed yourself, that you're not reacting in the same way that you used to? Somebody, let's say you had a core belief that you're stupid, and you do the mind map work and you dismantle the core belief through going to the cause and expressing the pain and the bad parenting around that. Well, if somebody comes around and calls you stupid, you're no longer triggered. You're stupid, you no longer buy in. So again, back to immunity, back to identifying it rather than with it, and being the cause rather than at the effect of what other people say and do to you. So I'll end on the note of, it's not what other people say or do, it's what you do with what they say or do. And that puts you in a causal position, because you'll never be able to control anyone. Okay? So they could say, it's up to you to do with or say whatever you think you want to say in accordance to what they're saying. So it's not what they are doing and saying, it's what you do with what they're doing or saying. Okay, everyone, please feel free to call my office, 310-739-4491. That number on the screen is the call-in number to the studio, so don't call that number. Or you can contact me at 𝗧icologicalhealingcenter.com. And I will be back next week. Good night, everyone. Thank you.